Hello indie game fans, a huge thank you goes to you, the community, for helping push that Roguelite video past 100,000 views. So given that you love Roguelites, here are some hidden gem picks that I don't see enough people talking about. The main factor here is less than 400 Steam reviews, which is an arbitrary number, but let's get into the list. For this video, we'll start in reverse, counting down from the number 1 pick, that being the awesome GALAK-Z, which if you cannot already tell, is very anime. You play as a pilot embroiled in an intergalactic war, which of course means shooting up some enemy ships and alien monsters alike. This is a dogfighting shoot 'em up that controls similarly to games like Referral, so it's engine, thrust and rotation, which does take some time to get used to, but once you cross that skill ceiling, it feels really good. Oh, and did I mention that your ship can transform into a Gundam-like mech as well? This does fall more on the punishing side of things, which is probably why it's not as popular, but do give this a try if you have not. The Void Rains Upon Her Heart is certainly a fan favourite, with more than a few of you name dropping this in the comments, and is another side-scrolling bullet hell shooter. This is a boss rush title where there really are a lot of projectiles, fast-moving bosses and lasers on screen. Although thankfully, there are a number of power-ups to help you with this, where you pilot a heart and have to defeat alien bosses with the power of love. Apparently there are 60 bosses, each with level 1 to level 9 versions, which can be vastly different, so it does have the necessary variety. Still in early access but should be complete pretty soon, now's as good a time as any to jump in. I've spent many hours with Solitairica, and I'm not afraid to say it, since I do love the simplicity of solitaire or match 3 mechanics and love it when RPG systems get added. It has you choosing different classes, each with their own abilities, which are then used to influence or change the cards on the board, but still remains true to its core, and I do love the artwork as well. Space Gladiators Escaping Tartarus has popped up a number of times, and if you do like a little bit more whimsy in your roguelikes, this is one to check out. As in the name, you are a space potato on a prison planet, having to fight for your freedom in gladiatorial arenas. And in some ways, this feels like a mishmash of Battle Block Theatre, Hollow Knight and Alien Hominid to some extent. Very well made, and another hidden gem. If there's one title that you want to get from this video, it's this one. Jupiter Hell made my monthly best of video in 2019 and is a turn-based roguelike set in a 90s flavoured sci-fi universe on the moons of Jupiter, where you play as a lone space marine against demonic forces. If it sounds familiar, it's because this developer originally made the fan game Doom Roguelike about 18 years ago and decided to do his own thing without the license, and it's a very interesting reimagining of that classic FPS franchise and is not to be missed.
Welcome to Jupiter Hell.
Speaking of old school, the original Rogue from 1980 somehow made it to Steam 40 years later and is worth the price of admission for the historical significance alone. A title from 2019 that I quite like is Serious Sam Tormental, the action roguelite version of a fan favourite first-person shooter. The art style is pretty cartoony and cute, with a number of fun upgrades and weapons to play with, where rather than picking up new weapons, your base gun that you spawn with can get upgraded with various mods. There's quite a bit of checklist stuff to do, which the game helpfully tracks for you, though I do wish that this developer was more active about the updates. Tactics roguelikes are another favourite of mine, with SFD Rogue TRPG being of interest. It's quite the standard fantasy theme, so skeletons, bats, spiders and such, with 7 character classes, a large variety of weapons and spells, and even the ability to use the environment to your advantage. The pixel art, while simple, does work for this, although do check out their upcoming title, Transfinite Dungeon, if you want to drool at some pixel art, but if you're on the fence, there's a free demo to check out. I do also have to give a very special shout out to Dungeon Deathball, since it's one of the more unique tactics roguelites out there. A little bit like Into the Breach, but you're prisoners playing a deadly sports game against monsters. This game shows you what enemies are going to do, so you can avoid attacks or make them hit each other. Super cool, smaller title which has been getting steady updates, so please support this indie dev. Another visually unique title that may not look like a roguelike at first glance is Equin the Lantern, a dungeon crawling RPG with tile-based exploration but zooms into turn-based RPG combat. You play as a little rabbit creature who has to delve into a 50-floor dungeon searching for the mythical lantern which is causing all sorts of chaos. It's quite the old school roguelike experience, so expect plenty of challenge despite the cutesy look, and since the release in 2016, it has been getting free content patches here and there, with a sequel in the works as well.
We were young, full of life.
Looking forward to tomorrow.
The thing is,
We had to fight for our tomorrow.
the enemy occupied our home.
Tried to victimize us.
We had to rise.
And learn how to become heroes.
I do love Darkest Dungeon, so of course Warsaw is worth a mention, one that looks very inspired by that game but with a World War II theme. Of course, with all games set in this time period, there are some heavy underlying themes where the historical Warsaw Uprising did end in tragedy, but you play as a bunch of resistant fighters fighting for their city. It has some interesting ideas with positional combat, ammo scarcity and such, and while there are issues, I do still think it's worth a look. UK developer Puppy Games have made a number of awesome arcade titles like Titan Attacks and Ultratron, but seem to be having a rough go with the indie dev live. But they did put out Basingstoke in 2018, which is of interest. Named after a town in the UK, play as a human who has to escape the town after an alien invasion. As mentioned, stealth games are difficult to come by these days, so a stealth roguelite is especially of interest, where you need to avoid toothy alien monsters and the reanimated dead alike. There's survival, crafting and horror elements, which makes this unique, where you do have a number of gadgets and equipment at your disposal to help you survive, where it's usually the smarter idea to cause a distraction and run. Not your typical roguelite, this nonetheless should be of interest to indie game fans. Add one more classic turn-based roguelite to the list with Huck, a glitchy fantasy dungeon crawler where you explore and adventure. Pretty generic setup, but I do like the look, and this has some interesting mechanics as well which are worth exploring. There's no traditional XP and leveling up, but does have randomized perks and upgrades, and there's even a narrator and a whole story to it, so it's a very interesting entry for sure. Another curiosity from last year is Rising Hell, a roguelite platformer which takes its verticality very seriously, and as a result has some interesting mechanics. For one, your character auto-attacks if you jump up into an enemy from below or fall on them from above, leading to quite the fluid combo-based action. Needs more content, but the core game is solid, and of course, I'm a fan of the pixel art. We close off with another fascinating Darkest Dungeon like Monster x Monster. As shown by the vibe of the trailer, it's wacky and whimsical, but the most interesting part is that your monsters can get augmented with various crazy upgrades, making your team truly unique. I like this, although I do think that people may be put off by the art style, but trust me, it's pretty good. Before I go, I did make a similar video like this last year with more hidden gems to check out, so do watch that video next for more. To see more of the big picture, check out these awesome videos and I will see you after the jump.